Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant and watched the stars through the main window. His ship was flying through deep space with 11 other human vessels. They were all heading towards something that scared even the bravest, space explorers. The year was 2387. Humans had built colonies on 47 different worlds across the galaxy. They had fast ships, powerful weapons, and smart computers. But there was still one place that no human understood. It was called the Kepler Anomaly Zone. 17 different groups had gone to study the zone before. None of them ever came back. No messages, no signals, nothing. They just disappeared like they never existed at all. Jake looked at the other ships flying near his vessel. The biggest one was the USS Ranger, commanded by Admiral Lisa Rodriguez. She was in charge of this whole mission. There were also heavy battlecruisers with thick armor and big guns. Science ships carried the smartest people and best equipment. Support ships brought extra fuel and supplies. Each ship had hundreds of people inside: soldiers, scientists, engineers, doctors, and pilots. They were the best humans that Space Command could find. Everyone knew this mission was dangerous, but someone had to figure out what was happening in the zone. Jake's ship was different from the others. The Defiant was smaller and faster. It had something special called quantum shielding. The engineers said it could bend space around the ship to hide it from enemies. Jake hoped they were right. "Captain, we're getting close to the zone," said Lieutenant Commander Danny Walsh. He was the science officer and spent most of his time staring at computer screens full of numbers and charts. "What do you see out there, Danny?" Jake asked. Danny frowned at his instruments. "The readings don't make sense, sir. Space itself looks wrong, like it's bent or twisted somehow." Jake walked over to look at Danny's screen. The normal stars and empty space showed up as expected. But ahead of them was something that hurt his eyes to look at. It was like a huge bubble made of red light that seemed to move and shift even though it wasn't really moving at all. "How big is that thing?" Jake asked. "About 3 light years across," Danny said. "That's bigger than most solar systems. And, Captain, I'm picking up energy readings that shouldn't be possible. This thing is breaking every law of physics I know." The communications officer, Pete Johnson, looked up from his station. "Sir, Admiral Rodriguez is calling all ship captains for a meeting." Jake nodded. "Put her on the main screen." The window view disappeared and was replaced by the face of Admiral Rodriguez. She was a tough woman who had been fighting in space for 20 years. Behind her, Jake could see the bridge of her flagship with officers running around preparing for whatever came next. "Captains," the Admiral said, "we're about to enter the zone. I want everyone to stay in formation and keep your weapons ready. We don't know what killed the other expeditions, but we're going to find out." Captain Sarah Miller of the USS Columbia spoke up. "Admiral, maybe we should send in a probe first. Test the waters before we risk our cruise." "We tried that before," Admiral Rodriguez replied. "Sent 50 different probes over the years. They all stopped working the moment they crossed into the zone. No, we need to go in ourselves if we want real answers." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had been in dangerous places before, but something about the zone felt different. It felt like it was watching them, waiting for them to come closer. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral continued, "your ship has the experimental shielding. I want you to take point position. If anything goes wrong, you might have the best chance of getting back out to warn Earth." "Understood, Admiral," Jake said. He didn't like the idea of leading his crew into danger, but orders were orders. The meeting ended and Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was small, but good. Danny Walsh knew more about space science than most professors. Chief Engineer Betty Collins could fix anything that broke. Navigator Susan Park could find her way through the most confusing starfields. Tactical Officer Amy Rodriguez was the Admiral's daughter and one of the best fighters in the fleet. "All right, people," Jake said. "We're going in first. Everyone stay sharp and watch your instruments. If you see anything strange, speak up immediately." "Stranger than a giant red bubble that breaks physics?" Betty asked with a small smile. "Much stranger," Jake replied. The Defiant moved ahead of the other ships. As they got closer to the zone, Jake could see it better. The red light seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Sometimes it looked solid, sometimes it looked like gas or energy. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Crossing the boundary in 30 seconds, Susan announced. Jake gripped his chair. All hands prepare for entry into the Kepler anomaly zone. The ship moved forward. The moment they crossed the invisible line, everything changed. The stars disappeared. The other ships vanished from view. Even their communications with the fleet went silent. They were inside the zone now, and they were completely alone. Red lights surrounded them on all sides. It wasn't coming from any particular direction. It just existed everywhere, making everything on the ship look like it was covered in blood. "Report," Jake ordered. "All systems are working," Betty said, "but the quantum shielding is acting strange. It's working harder than it should be, like something is pushing against it." "Navigation is completely lost," Susan added. "I can't find any reference points. No stars, no planets, nothing. It's like we're in empty space, but that's impossible." Danny was staring at his screens with wide eyes. "Captain, according to my instruments, we're not just in the zone. We're in a completely different kind of space. The laws of physics here are different from normal space." Before Jake could respond, Pete's voice cut through the bridge. "Sir, I'm getting a signal from Admiral Rodriguez. She says the other ships made it through. They're all here somewhere, but we can't see each other." Jake felt a small relief. At least they weren't completely alone. "Can you reach them on communications?" "Barely," Pete said. "The signal is very weak and keeps cutting out." "Keep trying," Jake ordered. "We need to stay in contact with the fleet." As the Defiant moved deeper into the zone, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Something was out there in the red light, something that had been waiting for them to arrive. He just hoped his ship and crew were ready for whatever they were about to face. The hunt was about to begin. The red light around the USS Defiant grew brighter and darker in waves like the zone was breathing. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and tried to stay calm, but something felt very wrong. His crew was quiet and tense as they waited for orders from Admiral Rodriguez. "Captain," Pete Johnson said from his communication station, "I'm getting reports from the other ships. Everyone made it through, but their instruments are going crazy too." "Good," Jake said. "At least we're all here together." Danny Walsh looked up from his science station with worry in his eyes. "Sir, I'm detecting something strange. The space around us keeps changing. It's like reality itself is shifting and moving." Before Jake could ask what that meant, Pete's face went white. "Captain, the USS Meridian just sent an emergency signal. They said something was wrong with their shields and then—" Pete stopped talking and stared at his screen. "Then what?" Jake demanded. "Then nothing, sir. The signal just cut off." Jake stood up quickly. "Get me Admiral Rodriguez right now." The main screen flickered and showed the Admiral's worried face. Behind her, Jake could see officers running around in panic. "Morrison, are you getting the same readings we are?" the Admiral asked. "What readings?" Jake replied. "The Meridian is gone," Admiral Rodriguez said in a flat voice. 800 people. Just gone. No explosion, no wreckage, nothing. 1 second they were there, the next second empty space. Jake felt his blood turn cold. "Gone how?" "We don't know. They were doing a routine sensor sweep when they just vanished. Like they never existed at all." Danny turned around in his chair. "Captain, I'm scanning the area where the Meridian was supposed to be. There's nothing there, not even atoms or space dust. It's like that part of space was erased." The bridge of the Defiant became very quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If a ship with 800 people could just disappear without warning, what was stopping the same thing from happening to them? "All ships, stay close together," Admiral Rodriguez ordered over the communications. "Whatever killed the Meridian might still be out there." Jake was about to respond when Amy Rodriguez, his tactical officer, suddenly shouted from her station. "Captain, the USS Columbia is under attack." "Under attack by what?" Jake asked. "I don't know, sir. There's nothing on sensors, but space around the Columbia is bending and twisting. It looks like reality is folding in on itself." On the main screen, Jake could see the Columbia in the distance. The space around the ship was rippling like water, creating waves of distortion that moved closer and closer to the vessel. The ship tried to fly away, but the waves followed it no matter which direction it went. "Columbia, this is Morrison," Jake called over the radio. "What's your status?" Captain Sarah Miller's voice came back full of fear. "Jake, we can't escape whatever this is. Our engines are at full power, but we're not moving. It's like space itself is holding us in place." The ripples around the Columbia grew stronger. Jake watched in horror as the ship began to stretch and bend like it was made of rubber instead of metal. The crew was screaming over the radio, but their voices sounded strange and distorted. "Columbia, get out of there," Jake shouted. "We're trying," Captain Miller replied. "But it's too late. Tell my family Her voice cut off. The Columbia was gone. Just like the Meridian, it had been erased from existence. 2 ships down, Admiral Rodriguez said grimly. "All remaining vessels, spread out. Don't stay in one place too long." Jake felt sick to his stomach. Over 1,000 people had just died, and they didn't even know what killed them. "Danny, what are your instruments showing?" "The distortions are moving, Captain. They're not random. Something is controlling them, hunting us." "Hunting us?" "Yes, sir. Each attack follows the same pattern. First, space starts bending around the target ship. Then reality folds in on itself until the ship gets crushed out of existence. But here's the scary part. Whatever is doing this can predict where our ships will go. It's smart." Chief Engineer Betty Collins spoke up from her station. "Captain, I think I know why we're still alive when the others aren't." "Tell me." "Our quantum shielding, it's not just protecting us from enemy weapons, it's creating small distortions in space around our ship. Maybe that's confusing whatever is hunting us." Jake nodded. "How long will our shields hold?" "Hard to say. They're working much harder than they should be. If we keep pushing them, they might burn out." Before Jake could respond, Pete called out again. "Sir, the USS Newton is reporting strange readings. Their science officer says space is starting to bend around them." On the screen, Jake could see another ship in the distance. The same ripples that had destroyed the Columbia were forming around the Newton. The science vessel tried to escape, but just like before, the distortions followed it. "Newton, this is the Defiant," Jake called. "Try reversing your engines. Maybe you can break free." "Already tried that," came the reply. "Nothing works. The distortions are getting stronger." Jake watched helplessly as the third ship was consumed by the impossible forces. The Newton stretched and twisted before disappearing completely. 3 ships and over 1,500 people were gone in less than 2 hours. "This is Admiral Rodriguez to all ships," came the voice over the radio. "Whatever is in here with us is picking us off one by one. We need to figure out how to fight back before we all end up like the others." "Admiral," Jake replied, "I think we're dealing with something that doesn't follow normal rules. Our weapons and shields might not work against it." "Then what do you suggest, Captain?" Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were scared but still working hard to keep the ship running. "We need to understand what we're fighting before we can beat it. Danny, I want you to study every bit of data we have on those attacks." "Yes, sir." Over the next few hours, Jake watched from his bridge as more ships disappeared. The USS Arizona vanished while trying to scan the zone's boundaries. The USS Montana was erased while attempting to contact Earth. One by one, the fleet was being destroyed by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. By the end of the day, only 3 ships remained out of the original 12. The USS Ranger with Admiral Rodriguez, the USS Phoenix with Captain Robert Stone, and Jake's own ship, the Defiant. "Admiral," Jake called over the radio, "we need to try something different. Running and hiding isn't working. What do you have in mind?" "I think our quantum shielding is the key. It's the only reason we're still alive. Maybe we can use it as a weapon instead of just protection." Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "That's dangerous, Morrison. If you drop your shields to use them as weapons, you'll be defenseless." "Maybe," Jake said, "but if we don't try something soon, we're all going to die anyway." As if to prove his point, the space around the USS Phoenix began to ripple and bend. Captain Stone's voice came over the radio, full of panic. "This is the Phoenix. We're under attack. The distortions are everywhere. We can't escape." Jake and The others watched as the fourth ship was consumed by the hungry forces that lived in the zone. Now only 2 ships remained, the Admiral's flagship and the Defiant. "Morrison," Admiral Rodriguez said quietly, "you might be our only hope. Your shields are stronger than mine. If anyone can figure out how to fight this thing, it's you." Jake looked at his crew one more time. They were the last hope for humanity in this twisted place. Whatever was hunting them had killed thousands of people, but it hadn't beaten them yet. "We're going to find a way out of this," Jake told his crew. "We're going to survive, and we're going to make sure this thing can never hurt anyone else." The hunt was far from over, but now Jake was determined to become the hunter instead of the prey. Captain Jake Morrison had not slept in 3 days. He stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant and stared at the red light that surrounded his ship. Only 2 vessels remained from the original fleet of 12, his ship and Admiral Rodriguez's flagship, the USS Ranger. 10 ships had vanished. Over 4,000 people were gone. Jake's crew was exhausted and scared, but they kept working. They had to find answers before the invisible enemy killed them too. "Captain," Danny Walsh called from his science station, "I think I'm starting to understand what we're fighting." Jake walked over to Danny's station. The screens were covered with numbers and charts that hurt his head to look at. "Tell me what you found." "It's not a ship or a weapon like we thought," Danny said. "I think we're dealing with something alive, something made of pure energy and thought instead of flesh and blood." "You mean like a ghost?" "Sort of, but much more powerful. This thing exists in a different way than we do. To it, our ships and bodies are like infections that need to be cleaned away." Chief Engineer Betty Collins looked up from her work. "That would explain why our weapons don't work against it. You can't shoot something that doesn't have a physical body." Dr. Gary Thompson, the ship's doctor and scientist, had been studying the readings from all the destroyed ships. "I've been looking at the data from each attack," he said. "The pattern is always the same. The creature surrounds a ship with energy fields, then slowly crushes it out of existence." "But why are we still alive?" Jake asked. "Our quantum shielding," Betty replied. "It creates tiny distortions in space around our ship. I think that confuses the creature. It can't get a good grip on us." Danny nodded excitedly. "That's not all. I've been monitoring energy levels in the zone. Each time the creature destroys a ship, it gets stronger. It's feeding on us." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Feeding how?" "Every living thing gives off a special energy signature," Dr. Thompson explained. "When the creature destroys a ship, it absorbs all that life energy. The more people it kills, the more powerful it becomes. So it's been getting stronger with each attack," Jake said. "Yes, and there's something else." Danny's voice was very quiet. "I don't think the ships were completely destroyed. I'm picking up faint energy echoes from where they disappeared. Very faint, but they're there." "What does that mean?" "I think the people might still be alive somehow, trapped in a kind of energy prison while the creature slowly drains their life force." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone was thinking about their friends and fellow humans who might be suffering somewhere in this twisted space. Communications Officer Pete Johnson suddenly spoke up. "Captain, I'm getting a transmission from Admiral Rodriguez." "Put her on." "Screen." Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. She looked tired and worried. "Morrison, we need to talk. My science team has been working on the same problem as yours." "What did you find, Admiral?" "This creature, whatever it is, has been here for a very long time, maybe thousands of years. The zone isn't natural. The creature created it as a trap. It waits for ships to enter, then feeds on them." Jake nodded. "Our people think the other ships might still be alive somewhere." "We reached the same conclusion, which means we have a choice to make. We can try to escape and warn Earth, or we can try to rescue our people." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all listening carefully. These people had families and friends on the missing ships. "There might be a third option," Jake said slowly. "What if we don't have to choose?" "What do you mean?" "Betty, you said our quantum shielding confuses the creature because it creates distortions in space. What if we use those distortions as weapons?" Betty frowned. That's very dangerous, Captain. If we overload the shield generators, they could explode and destroy the ship. But could it work? Maybe. The shield generators create controlled tiers in space-time. If we made bigger tiers, we might be able to disrupt the creature's control over the zone. Dr. Thompson was studying his medical scanner. There's something else we should consider. I've been monitoring the crew's health and everyone is showing signs of energy drain. The creature isn't just feeding on the destroyed ships, it's slowly draining us too. How long do we have? Jake asked. At this rate, maybe 2 days before we're too weak to fight. Navigator Susan Park had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. Captain, I've been trying to map the zone's boundaries. Every time we try to fly toward the edge, space loops back on itself and brings us to the center. But I noticed something strange. What? The loops aren't perfect. There are tiny gaps in the pattern. If we could hit those gaps at exactly the right moment, we might be able to break through. Jake felt a small spark of hope. So we might be able to escape. One ship might be able to escape, Susan corrected, but only by abandoning the other ship and all the trapped people. Jake looked at the faces of his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. They couldn't abandon their fellow humans even if it meant their own death. Admiral, Jake called over the communications. I have a plan. It's dangerous and might not work, but it's better than sitting here waiting to die. I'm listening. We use our quantum shielding to create massive distortions throughout the zone. Instead of small tiers in space, we make big ones. That should weaken the creature's control and maybe free the trapped ships. That would require both our ships to overload their shield generators at the same time, Admiral Rodriguez said. We'd be defenseless while we did it. I know. But if we time it right, the creature won't be able to react fast enough to stop us. Amy Rodriguez, the Admiral's daughter and Jake's tactical officer, had been listening to the plan. Captain, there's one more thing to consider. If we're going to do this, we need to make sure the creature commits fully to attacking us. We need to make ourselves irresistible bait. How do we do that? We drop our shields completely for a few seconds. Make the creature think we're helpless. When it moves in for the kill, that's when we trigger the overload. Jake felt his hands shake slightly. The plan was essentially suicide. They would have to make themselves completely vulnerable to an enemy that had already killed 10 ships. One mistake in timing and they would all die. It's our only chance to save everyone, Jake said finally. If we don't try, we all die anyway, and Earth never learns what happened here. Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Morrison, if we do this and it works, you and your crew will be heroes. If it doesn't work, we'll all be dead. No, Admiral, but we have to try. All right, let's do it. We'll coordinate the attack from both ships. On my signal, we drop shields and make ourselves targets. Then we overload everything we have and hope it's enough. Jake turned to his crew. You heard the plan. Everyone knows the risks. If anyone wants to object, speak up now. No one said a word. They were all ready to risk their lives to save their fellow humans. Then let's get to work, Jake said. We have one chance to beat this thing and rescue our people. Let's make it count. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity's fate hung in the balance. Captain Jake Morrison took a deep breath and looked at his crew one last time. The USS Defiant and the USS Ranger were the only 2 ships left from the original 12. In a few minutes, they would either save everyone or die trying. All stations. Report ready, Captain, Amy Rodriguez said from her tactical station. Her hands were steady on the controls, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. Betty, how are the shield generators? Jake asked. Chief Engineer Betty Collins was working frantically at her station. I've rerouted all power to the quantum shields. When we overload them, they'll create the biggest space-time distortions this galaxy has ever seen. But Captain, once we start, there's no going back. The generators will burn out completely. How long will we have? Maybe 30 seconds from the time we drop shields until the overload is complete. If the creature doesn't take the bait in that time, we're all dead. Communications Officer Pete Johnson looked up from his station. Sir, Admiral Rodriguez is ready on the Ranger. She's waiting for your signal. Jake nodded and opened the channel to the Admiral's ship. Rodriguez, this is Morrison. Are you ready? As ready as we'll ever be, came the Admiral's voice. Jake, I want you to know that whatever happens, you and your crew have shown more courage than anyone could ask for. Thank you, Admiral. Your daughter has been a credit to your family and to the fleet. Amy smiled slightly at the compliment, but her focus remained on her instruments. Dr. Gary Thompson spoke up from his science station. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the zone. The creature knows we're planning something. Let it come, Jake said grimly. Susan, take us to the center of the zone. If we're going to do this, we might as well make it easy for that thing to find us. Navigator Susan Park guided the Defiant toward the heart of the red-lit space. The USS Ranger followed close behind. As they moved deeper into the zone, the red light around them began to pulse faster and brighter. The creature is getting excited, Danny Walsh reported from his science station. Energy levels are spiking everywhere. I think it knows this is going to be the final battle. Jake sat in his command chair and watched the space around them begin to ripple and bend. The creature was preparing to attack, just like it had done to the other 10 ships. All right, people, Jake announced to his crew. This is it. Everyone remember the plan. We drop shields, let the creature move in close, then Betty triggers the overload. Timing is everything. Contact Admiral Rodriguez, Jake ordered Pete. Channel. Open, sir. Admiral, do you see the distortions forming around us? I see them, Morrison. Space is bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. The creature is definitely taking the bait. Jake could see the same ripples that had destroyed the other ships beginning to form around both the Defiant and the Ranger. But this time, instead of trying to escape, they were flying straight into the trap. Energy levels are going crazy, Danny reported. The creature is putting everything it has into this attack. It wants to finish us off quickly. Perfect, Jake said. Betty, are you ready? Shield generators are charged and ready to overload, Captain. Just give me the word. Jake watched as the space distortions grew stronger around both ships. The creature was moving in for the kill just like they had hoped, but they had to wait until the perfect moment. Now, Admiral, Jake shouted. Drop shields. Both ships turned off their protective shields at the same moment. Immediately, the creature's energy fields surrounded them completely. Jake felt the ship shake as reality itself began to twist and bend around them. Hull pressure is increasing, Amy reported. The creature is trying to crush us. Hold steady, Jake ordered. Wait for it. The Defiant groaned and shook as the creature's power pressed against it from all sides. Through the main window, Jake could see the USS Ranger experiencing the same crushing forces. Both ships were being squeezed like tin cans. Captain, we're at critical pressure, Betty called out. If we wait much longer, the ship will break apart. Not yet, Jake said through gritted teeth. We need the creature to commit completely. Danny was watching his instruments with wide eyes. Sir, the creature is pulling energy from all over the zone to power this attack. It's using everything it has. That's what we want, Jake replied. When it's fully committed, it won't be able to defend itself. The crushing pressure increased. Jake could hear metal bending and creaking throughout the ship. Warning lights flashed red on every station. They were seconds away from being destroyed. Now, Betty, Jake shouted. Overload. Everything? Betty's hands flew over her controls. Overloading shield generators now. The ship's lights dimmed as all power flowed into the quantum shield systems. Then, in a blinding flash, the generators released all their energy at once. Massive tiers in space-time opened up around both ships. The controlled distortions that had protected them became weapons that ripped through the creature's energy fields. The red light of the zone flickered and wavered as the creature's power was disrupted. It's working, Danny shouted over the noise. The creature's energy matrix is breaking apart. Jake could see flashes of light appearing throughout the zone. One by one, the missing ships began to reappear. The USS Meridian flickered back into existence, its crew gasping and confused, but alive. The USS Columbia materialized with damage to its hull but intact. Admiral Rodriguez, can you see this? Jake called over the communications. I see it, Morrison. All the ships are coming back. The Newton, the Arizona, the Montana, all of them. As each ship returned to normal space, the Creature grew weaker. Its control over the zone was failing. The red light began to fade, replaced by the normal black of space and distant stars. But the creature wasn't finished yet. In a final desperate attack, it gathered what remained of its power and struck at both the Defiant and the Ranger simultaneously. Massive. Energy surge coming right at us, Amy warned. This is it, Jake said. The creature is using its last strength. If we can survive this, we win. The final attack hit both ships like a hammer. The Defiant spun wildly through space as systems failed throughout the vessel. The lights went out and emergency power kicked in. Damage report, Jake called out in the darkness. We're alive, Betty replied, her voice shaky. Engines are down. Life support is running on backup power, but we're alive. What about the creature? Danny checked his instruments. It's gone, Captain. The energy signature has completely disappeared. I think we destroyed it. Pete's voice came through the darkness. Sir, I'm getting signals from all the missing ships. They're all reporting in. Everyone is alive. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had saved everyone. Admiral Rodriguez, what's your status? Jake called. We're damaged but operational, Morrison. More importantly, we're all alive and the zone is collapsing. Whatever that creature was, it's gone now. Through the main window, Jake could see the red light of the zone fading away completely. Normal space returned, and in the distance, he could see all 12 ships of the original fleet floating safely in the void. All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez, came the voice over the communications. Prepare for return to Earth, we're going home. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were tired, scared, and exhausted, but they were smiling. They had faced an enemy that defied understanding and won through courage and determination. Good work, everyone, Jake said quietly. We saved them all. As the fleet began its long journey back to human space, Jake knew that this story would be told for generations. Not because humans were the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy, but because when faced with impossible odds, they chose to fight for each other rather than save themselves. The zone had killed all but one human ship, but that one ship had refused to give up. And in the end, that made all the difference.